Headliner Nation, the divisional round brought way more excitement than what the wildcard round did. But from what ifs to collusion once again, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, not only for the losers, but for the winners as well. And what does it mean moving forward? Let's jump into a breakdown of every single game from this past week. And because I know a lot of you are going to want to hear what I have to say about my Detroit Lions, let's start with Washington's big win over Detroit on the road. They are headed to an NFC championship once again. And when it comes to the Detroit Lions, the 2024 Lions are going to be one of the biggest what ifs in NFL history, because it is hard to debate the fact that this was a Super Bowl caliber roster at the beginning of the season. And with all of the injuries, 18 players on injured reserve, the most in the National Football League, what could have been for the Detroit Lions this season? Now, a lot of people are blaming the loss to the Washington Commanders on Jared Goff. And I get it, and I understand. Throwing 3 interceptions and having a fumble, you can't do that in this big of a matchup, especially with an offense that plays the way Washington does. But you're kidding yourself if you don't think Washington was still going to have a shot at winning that game, even without the turnovers. When Amik Robinson broke his arm on the first drive for the Lions, as a Lions fan, I already knew that they were going to be in trouble. A majority of their defensive starters were wiped out this season. And even if Jared Goff played a clean game, Jaden Daniels played a great game as well. And they were going to be in that till the very end. If Detroit had been 100% on defense, it may have been a different story. But unfortunately now, we're going to have to wait until 2025 to see if this team can get healthy and make another run. But they've got some question marks, as both coordinators are probably going to be gone, and a couple of key free agents that hopefully they can bring back to help keep this team moving in the right direction. The Washington Commanders are the feel-good story of 2024, but not only are they the feel-good story, they absolutely deserve to be here. The job Dan Quinn has done is fantastic. Cliff Kingsbury, he's definitely on a little bit of a redemption tour after being tossed to the side in Arizona. But this is all about Jaden Daniels, who's the next big quarterback in the NFL. This guy, as of right now, is probably in the S tier of quarterbacks, and that's crazy to say about a rookie. But you should be talking about him with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and some of the best quarterbacks in the league. Jaden Daniels is right up there. Yes, he has the talent, but when you take a look at what a rookie quarterback does, and when you take a look at how they progress throughout a season, it's not just the talent that really becomes an issue. The main factor is how quickly do they pick up on the speed of an NFL game. And a lot of that has to do with staying cool, calm, and collective. And Jaden Daniels is all of those things plus some. We could be watching the next great NFL quarterback. We think Lamar Jackson has had a really good career. We think Josh Allen has had a really good career. Jaden Daniels, by the time it's all said and done, will either be right there with them or very close to being over the top of them. When it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, I do not have a rooting interest against them. I like to appreciate greatness when we see it. And Patrick Mahomes and this Kansas City Chiefs team for the last several years have been one of the greatest runs in NFL history. And if they make it to another Super Bowl and they win it, I'm going to be okay with it. I'm not going to hate it because of Patrick Mahomes or his wife or his brother or Taylor Swift or the fact that they're winning or whatever reason you choose to hate the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you want to argue the fact that Kansas City is getting some help from the officials, it's really hard to argue against that these days. And I don't like to be one of those guys that dives into the narrative that the NFL is fixing games or they have things set up or anything like that. But unfortunately, when you have another mishap this past week where there's more penalties that benefit the Kansas City Chiefs, then what are we supposed to think? And as of right now, basically everybody that's not a Kansas City Chiefs fan thinks the same thing. The Chiefs are getting some help to make another run at the Super Bowl. And while I haven't seen anything that is super blatant, and you can probably argue that, it is very clear that unfortunately, the refs do give the Chiefs a few calls here and there that benefit them and the outcome of their games. The NFL has an officiating problem, and they have had for quite some time. And until they really dive into what can they do to help fix this, instead of creating stupid rules like for the hip drop tackle that doesn't even get called anyway, let's figure out a way to start getting more calls accurate on the field and even changing them on the field if it's necessary. Now, Kansas City is going to welcome Buffalo next week, and they better have their A game, because when I talk about Buffalo in a second, I'll explain why they have a legitimate shot to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. The Houston Texans came into Kansas City ready to play football, and unfortunately, they just couldn't overcome some of those calls that went against them. But this Houston Texans team is set up for success over the next several years. And next year could look a whole lot different when they could finally get healthy. But they're going to have question marks at the wide receiver position once again. Tank Dell is probably not going to be ready to play football anytime soon, and his entire 2025 season is going to be in jeopardy. What are they going to do about Stephon Diggs? Will they try to keep him around either for another year or long term? They have some question marks that they are going to have to answer, so CJ Stroud has weapons, because we saw it this year. When he doesn't have his weapons around him and he doesn't have his weapons healthy, his game can definitely take a step back. But the offensive line is going to be the biggest issue. They need to keep CJ Stroud clean, and they need to invest in their offensive line, because if you don't, you're going to end up like a team that also was in the AFC South that ran their quarterback out of town pretty quickly, and that was Andrew Luck. Indianapolis didn't do anything to give him players around him and protection that he needed, and he got beat down and beat down and beat down. Now, is CJ Stroud going to quit right before the beginning of a season or cut his NFL career short? Maybe not. I'm not trying to say that, but they need to keep CJ Stroud healthy and up off the ground. The last thing you want to see for your young franchise quarterback is for him to be laying on his back more than your neighbor's wife while he's at work. Make sure that you upgrade the offensive line and give CJ Stroud time and protection in 2025. One of the worst position NFL teams can be in these days is not having a contingency plan at the quarterback position. Take the Patriots, for instance. They never had a contingency plan when Tom Brady finally decided to move on. They decided to try and go with Mac Jones. Didn't really work out that great, but they didn't have somebody ready to go. Take a look at the Green Bay Packers. After Brett Favre, after Aaron Rodgers, they had quarterbacks ready to go. What are the LA Rams going to do? Because there's question marks about how much longer Matthew Stafford is going to be playing football. And his contract right now is basically a year-to-year, we'll see what happens type of deal. And while he still has some football left in him, and I don't think he's going to retire this offseason, that announcement could definitely be coming much sooner rather than later. And their backup right now is Jimmy Garoppolo. It would probably be wise that the LA Rams start thinking about what they're going to do with the quarterback position. This year's quarterback class may not be the best one, but finding somebody, a diamond in the rough, that they could draft to start sitting behind Matthew Stafford may be one of the best long-term decisions this team could make. It's a pretty simple defensive game plan. If you want to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, you have to stop Saquon Barkley. But for the Washington Commanders, that's been one of their biggest issues this season. Jahmyr Gibbs ran all over them last week. They had absolutely no answer to stop him. And if you think Saquon Barkley is going to be stopped en route to his first Super Bowl appearance, you better think twice. Washington better be in the meeting rooms this week figuring out a way to slow him down and to make Jalen Hurts beat you. Which typically when you talk about like really good quarterbacks or the top tier quarterbacks, you really don't want to put the ball in their hands. But in this case, keep the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands as much as possible and out of Saquon Barkley's hands. If you can do that and limit the explosive plays that Barkley has shown over the last several weeks and really all season long, you're going to have a shot. But if you can't do that, Philadelphia is going back to another Super Bowl. And honestly, if Washington is going to have any shot at beating Philadelphia next week, they're going to have to level up their defense. Sometimes that's easier said than done. At the NFL level, there's a lot of different things that you need to do to level up your game. But in the gaming world, there's only one thing you need to do to level up your game, and that's head on over to Turtle Beach, who we are partnered with not only for the 2024 season, but into the 2025 off season as well. And I'll tell you what, if you're looking to upgrade your gaming experience, viewing experience, music, whatever it may be, Turtle Beach is the place to do that because their line of headsets are absolutely fantastic. And these headsets are used for way more than just gaming. You can listen to your music on them. You can watch your videos. You can put them on if you need to drown out your kids for a few hours because they're driving you crazy. Because I'll tell you what, you can't hear anything outside of these headphones. My son has a pair, and when I'm calling him down for dinner, I've got to go up there and shake him almost to get him to pay attention. He cannot hear me yelling from the bottom of the steps. So if you're looking to upgrade your gaming experience or whatever it may be at your setup, make sure you head on over to turtlebeach.com and use code word headliners so you can get 10% off of your entire order. Their line of equipment, not just for headphones, but keyboards, mice, and everything in between is exactly what you need to take your experience and upgrade your game. Is playoff Lamar the issue in Baltimore? Because he shows out during the regular season. He's got a couple of MVPs under the belt already, but it feels like when we get to the playoffs, Lamar Jackson just doesn't step up the way his team needs him to. And there's going to be question marks basically saying the same exact thing this offseason now. This past week, is it Lamar Jackson's fault? Maybe a little bit. A couple of really bad turnovers in the first half definitely gave Buffalo a little bit more oomph than what you need to while they're at home. But the second half was no better. Mark Andrews, he had himself a terrible game. A very costly fumble while Baltimore was driving in the second half. And then dropping an easy 2-point conversion to keep this game tied and possibly head into overtime. Right now, when you take a look at this Baltimore team, you have to decide, where do we go? How do we upgrade things? The offense for me is just fine. The defense is going to need a little bit of work. But in the future, I really don't know what to call it with Lamar Jackson. And this is where y'all can step in and help answer this question. Is playoff Lamar the issue? Is that the reason why Baltimore has not been able to get back to a Super Bowl? Will they be able to with Lamar Jackson? Is he a guy that's going to be a great regular season quarterback but can't seal the deal in the playoffs? What do you think down in the comments below? Because right now for Baltimore fans, it's another season of what ifs. Is this Buffalo team different? Because if they are, they're going to win next week against the Kansas City Chiefs. In the past few years, when we've seen Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, Buffalo Bills versus Kansas City Chiefs, in my mind, it's always kind of this thought process that Buffalo's not going to win that game. And the Buffalo players, I feel like, kind of thought that going into it. They go into that game thinking to themselves, can we win? Can we finally get this done? Can we knock off Kansas City? Instead of going into that game saying, we've got this, we're going to knock them off, it just felt like they were waiting for something to happen to them. This Buffalo team feels a little bit different, though, and it doesn't feel like a what if with them right now. It feels like a win. When are they going to beat the Chiefs? When are they going to get to the Super Bowl? And who will they be facing in the Super Bowl? Because this Buffalo team feels like that type of a team. And when you're not questioning yourself, and you're not questioning the outcome of a game, and you're not going into a game thinking, man, are we going to have to beat the refs? Because unfortunately, that's kind of what happened to Houston last week. You heard it from several of the players. Will Anderson, Joe Mixon, even their head coach, DeMeco Ryans. All of them after the game said, we came into this game knowing that we were going to have to beat the refs, knowing that we were going to have to beat more than just the Chiefs. If Buffalo does the same thing and goes into this game telling themselves, we know we're going to have to beat the refs, we know we're going to have to beat more than just the Chiefs, that's a recipe for disaster. But if they go into this game saying, we're just going to beat the Chiefs, game over. Buffalo's going on to a Super Bowl. Headliner Nation, what stuck out for you with the divisional round this past weekend? What are some questions that you have? Did your team lose or did your team win? And how are you feeling on Monday after all of the action is over with? And who are you rooting for moving forward? Leave a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and make sure you keep an eye out for Pick 6, our brand new show airing every Wednesday night. You'll see it again this week. Headliner Nation, I'll see you all later. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.